I would say it's because they're confused, and it's easier to not make a decision than it is to make a decision. My name is Robert Poole. Today I'm going to talk to you about how we can help our customers get through the decision-making process, help them clarify and get rid of that confusion that they're presented with so many choices. You know, um, there's an old saying that says, the confused mind doesn't buy. And yet, if you look at our marketplace today, we're just bombarded with marketing messages all the time, all day long. I read a survey or a study, and this was probably close to 10 years ago, and they said at the time, that we were literally bombarded by 5,000 marketing messages a day. So if you can think if that was that way 10 years ago, I mean, what is it these days? By the time you hit social media and, all the stuff we just drive around outside and things popping up on your computer, your phone, I mean, you name it, we're just, and so our brain has to filter out all this stuff because we're not even seeing most of it. And so our customers are in the same spot. They have too many choices. When we go to, the local convenience store, now when you used to be able to buy a Coke or a Diet Coke, and now you've got a Coke in 20 different flavors, and you just sit there and you're like, I don't know which one, it's like I have, the Amazon Prime Video at home, and, I don't spend a lot of time watching TV, but, I like movies every now and then. And so what do I find myself doing though? As I'm scrolling through the stuff and, I'll say, okay, I got an hour or 2 hours or whatever, and I'll spend all my time just looking at trailers and then putting them on a watch list to do someday, because there's just so many choices. You go to Netflix, you go to, in any streaming platform, there's thousands and thousands of choices. So how do we even deal with that? Again, it's like going to Walmart and 20 different laundry soaps, and they're starting to figure that out, though. Walmart has actually cut back the number of their brands specifically because of this problem. But it's a problem that all of us deal with in our businesses if we're not careful. So just as human beings, we are just bombarded by too many choices every day. And so, of course, the question is, how do we in our businesses break through all that noise with our customers? How do we get them to focus on what we're trying to get across them, our message, the bottom line is we need to guide them and literally tell them what to do. So how do we practically do that? The first thing is that we've got to be loud in the marketplace, so to speak. So if we have, there's all this competing stuff for our attention, we've got to somehow raise our message above everything else so it actually gets through. If you are old enough, you may remember a movie years ago with Kevin Costner, the baseball thing, Field of Dreams, it was this whole idea, and famous quote out of there was, if you build it, they will come. And, when it comes to marketing, if you build it, they won't come, meaning you have to go out and get them. We have to be aggressive in our marketing. We can't sit back and say, well, I'm a professional, I don't need to aggressively go out and get, it's like, well, you're not going to be a professional too long if you don't figure out how to market. We have this perception even today, like take, for instance, an email campaign, we think, oh, well, I don't want to email them too often. So you think, well, if I email them, put them on a campaign, I send them something once a month or whatever. I guarantee that if you think you should send somebody once a month, you need to be sending it to them once a week, 4 times a month or whatever. So you want to double or triple whatever you think is probably a reasonable amount because, a couple of reasons. Number one, they're not getting half of what you're sending with email because of spam filters and everything. But two, even if they get it, they're not reading most of it. You're lucky to get somebody to read 10% of what you send them. And then even if they read that email, they're not reading all the way through it. So we've got to get over this idea that, oh, I'm feeling too aggressive or whatever. People, are very, very rarely offended because we, send them too much information, Once in a while you get somebody who'll complain, but, not in the big scheme of things. And, it's the same thing with cold calling. Somebody, I experienced this as a young man, I was I was a stockbroker basically for I think it was about 18 months or 2 years, and at the time I did all cold calling. That was the way I got business, and I remember people would say, "Oh yeah, call me back in 3 months or whatever," And so, hey, I put it on my little calendar, and I'd call them back in 3 months, and guess what? They'd signed up with another broker. And it was almost like clockwork. And so somebody tells you to call them back in 3 months, call them in a month. So we got to reduce the time, regardless of what we think, is appropriate or what a prospect tells us. Because again, do you really think if somebody tells you call them back in 3 months and you call them in a month, you really think that's harassment and that they're going to be mad at you? They're not going to say, well, hey, you were supposed to call back in 3 months. I just talked to you a month ago. They're probably not even going to remember you. So that's the first thing. We got to be loud and we got to be aggressive in our marketing, because if we don't, we're going to get lumped in with everybody else, and they're not even going to see our message. And one final thing, particularly like on email, or it could be direct mail, whatever. Sometimes we'll write campaigns for email or anything else. We'll send all these things, and then we'll put in there, hey, in my last email, I talked about this or whatever, and here's a new concept. And we got to be very careful not to make any one marketing piece reliant on previous pieces that was sent to that person, because we have to assume that that person did not get, did not read, did not see whatever we previously sent them, whether that was a mailer, whether it was an ad, whether it was an email. It's got to be sort of self-contained, if you will, that it will stand and get our message across regardless of what we've sent them in the past. So we can't count on that. In general, again, how do we do this? We have to tell people what to do. As human beings, it's we tend to procrastinate. We tend to not make decisions because we've got bombarded with so many decisions every day. Our brain can only handle so much. And so, if we're presented with a decision that is not, we don't really have to make a decision. And it goes back to that HSC model I've talked about quite a lot. How do we get them over that hump? But if we present them with all these decisions, they're just not going to make any decision, because it's much easier to do that. It's much easier to stay in the status quo as human beings. It's just the way our brains work. A lot of times, if we present them with too many choices, all these things to do, it's like, well, they're just going to pick none and stay still. So we need to limit the options and make the decisions easier for people. What's a sort of a traditional example, offline, if you will. Again, cold calling. Let's say you're selling commercial insurance. When you call into a company, a lot of times, we do a lot of, in our business, we do a lot of cold calling, and that's how we built our company originally, even though we do a lot more these days. But that was the core product of our service for years, calling B2B. And we would do commercial insurance as an example. So, somebody would, a typical client would call, their prospect, call the prospect company and say, hey, we're XYZ insurance company, and we do life, and we do health, and we do workers' comp, and we do auto, and we do everything you can want, any insurance you want. And what does the person on the other side of the phone go? Well, no, I'm not interested. Why? Because, they've got all these things. They're thinking, do I need a quote in my workers' comp? What about my PNC? It's like, screw it. I'm not going to do it. Versus the way to do it, what's effective is to call them and say, hey, we've got, excellent new rates on workers' compensation. We can save you a lot of money. We just did for, XYZ company down the road. Can I talk to you about that? Can we quote you on that? And it's a very specific thing. And what's that? That makes it easy on the other person to make a decision, because they can go, oh, okay, workers' comp, that's easy. Oh yeah, sure. Yes or no. It makes it simple. And then, so let's say you are able to get in that way. Once you get in and start building that trust with the prospect, then you can sell them all the other stuff that you want to sell them. That big menu of items, if you will, all those services that you want to sell. So we always want to sell something that is very specific, very easy to decide on, something that doesn't take too many decisions. We don't want to be one of those we do it all firms, at least initially. And so, what do we, in the same regard, what do we do from an online perspective? One of the biggest problems I see with websites, and I know we've all experienced this, you go to a website and they've got a menu at the top, and it's literally got 50 different things there. You got products and services, you got, support and references and about us and contact us and all these things, I mean, some of these menus are massive, and not to mention you look at the homepage and you go, what is it that they do? Because they're telling you all this stuff that they do. We do this, this, and this, and this, and this. Back in the day when I did some web development years and years ago, they had these things called heat maps, which I'm sure they still have, but basically it tracks mouse movement and clicks on a web page so that you can look at it and go, oh, well, there's more people clicking on, this link or this area. They're interested in this area, so it's kind of usability stuff, whatever. It was funny just to look at it. And yes, it gives you some good idea what people maybe were interested in because of that particular, a lot of people clicked on that area or something. But really what it looked like is if you've ever seen, a gun target, a paper target that's been shot with a shotgun, for instance, all those little BBs, they're all over the place. And that's about what it would look like. And it's because people are looking at all this stuff and going, I don't know what to do. I don't even know what I'm looking for. And then guess what? Boom, they're out of there. And we're surprised that, the average time that they're staying on our homepage is, 3 seconds or 1 second or something before they click off. It's because we're confusing. We've got too many options. So, that's where something like a sales funnel comes in really handy, and it's basically a concept of giving them extremely limited choices. So you're on that web page and there's really only one option. If you want to do something, it's, hey, click this button to go to the next stage in the process. And again, you can't do that if you've got 15 different products you're trying to sell at once. Same concept as offline. We got to start with one product or service, one thing we want them to do, get them to do that because it's an easy decision to make. It doesn't confuse them. And then once we've, got them going down that trail, then we can guide them. And it also allows us to tailor the marketing messages. If we've got 15 different products and services, on a homepage, for instance, or a web page, how do we tailor a marketing message that covers all those things? Well, it's just this general, catch-all message, and it's not going to work. It's going to be very ineffective compared to if we know we're selling this particular product or this particular service, we know what about it, what kind of result that it's going to provide for our customers. It's much easier to develop those marketing messages for them. So we want to, again, be very specific, and it's something like a sales funnel that gives them very limited options, one, maybe two at most, really eliminates that problem. And again, it goes back and it allows us to tell them what to do because if we, again, leave people with a decision, easier to not make a decision. So we're basically saying, here, click on this thing, and that's the only option you got. Makes it easy for them. Okay. So bottom line is that it's we don't mean to, but in our modern world, it's very easy to confuse our customers, give them too many choices, give them too many decisions, which means they're not going to make any decision. We're all bombarded with all this stuff. So we've got to be loud, we've got to be aggressive, and we've got to tell them what to do. So if you start thinking about your business and your marketing that way, I guarantee it'll make a huge difference in the reaction you get. So I hope this is helpful. If you're not subscribed to the channel, please do that. That really helps us out, helps us get the word out, helps out me personally. So share it with your friends and colleagues, and write a review if you got any comments, good or bad, and click that like button, all that good YouTube-y stuff. And I will talk to you on the next video.